Hi, thank you for joining us today. My name is John Hamilton. This is the Metamor Emerging Technologies Show. Today we're going to be talking to Allan Connolly, aka Big Al, about entrepreneurship in the community. Thank you. Hi, welcome to the show, Emerging Technologies by Metamor. Today we're talking to Big Al Connolly. Al, good morning. Thank you for coming in.
You're most welcome, John.
So before we go in and talk to you today about the empowering communities and the entrepreneurship side of things, I thought it'd be great to hear a bit more about yourself and your background first of all. So please tell us.
Well, thanks, John. That's interesting. So, Big Al, at the age of 8, soccer mad in the UK, played football all day long and burst my football. So what does a young lad do when he's got no football and that's all he does all day? I was devastated. So I had no money to buy a new one, but I did have a billy cart at home. I went home, put a flat top on that billy cart, and I went to meet all of the tourists as they arrived in Blackpool and offered to take them and their luggage on a guided tour to their accommodation in return for their loose change.
So how big was this billy cart in order to transfer all these people's luggage around at any one time? And to be fair, you must have been extremely strong as well to be pulling that much luggage around.
The beauty of it is that we only took one tourist at a time. So when they arrived in Blackpool, it wasn't like going to overseas for 2 weeks. They came in to Blackpool for the weekend, so they probably had one case and a little bit of hand luggage. So quite easy, really. And as I say, I could make numerous trips. I was fit as a butcher's dog because I played football all day long. Yeah, and it was a win-win situation, and that's remained with me throughout my life. How do we make it win-win?
Yeah, and that was a very entrepreneurial start as well.
So at that age, I don't think you're an entrepreneur. In fact, we probably, there were no Richard Bransons or Elon Musks to think of back then. But it was entrepreneurial thinking. It was lateral thinking to solve a problem.
Just didn't have a name for it at the time.
Yeah.
Got it, yeah. Okay. And then how did you progress on from there?
So, like all good schoolboys, on the days that I did go to school, I was advised that playing number 9 for Arsenal was probably not part of my skill set, and that I should become a engineer.
Right. Okay.
So I started my apprenticeship as a fabricator welder. But Maggie Thatcher had a bit of a say in the outcome to that.
Yes.
Because at the time she decided to take on the unions. She broke the unions. She broke the steel industry. She broke the coal industry. Mm. And for the first time ever, indentured apprentices had no jobs to go to.
Right, okay. Must have been a really difficult time.
Yes, it was. And, you think on your feet a lot quicker when you're a little bit younger. So thinking on my feet, I just went, well, I don't really, it's not a passion that I want to continue on with, but I do need to earn some money.
Yeah.
So I went and knocked on a few doors and I asked if I could clean their windows. And enough people said yes for me to start a little window cleaning round. And within 4 weeks, I tripled my apprentice income. I was started at 8 o'clock in the morning, finished at 2, and I was in the pub, first one in the pub in the afternoon every day.
So you finished an apprenticeship, you didn't have any choice in that, you started a brand new business with no previous experience of that and tripled your income within a 4-week period. That's an amazing story just in and of itself. What do you think was in you or what came out in terms of your inherent nature or background to to generate that kind of self-belief and momentum, I think, is probably a massive part of that.
John, my stepfather died when I was fairly young. I was only 15, so that left my mum raising my brother and I.
Yep.
And guess who cleaned the windows?
Right. Okay.
Okay, so it was only a natural progression for me to go and offer that service, especially when a couple of the neighbours did ask me if I'd do theirs as well for some pocket money. So I just extrapolated that out, and I said, well, if I knock on enough doors, then I'm in the area anyway.
Yeah.
All I did each day, I might, when I first started, I'd clean 1 or 2 windows a day.
Yeah.
And then I'd spend the rest of the time going knocking on doors.
Fantastic.
And then, if I was cleaning 5 windows that day, then I'd spend, another hour going and knocking on some more doors because I was in that area anyway.
Yeah, that's fantastic resilience. That's a great approach. Very impressive. And then from then on, so cleaning windows, that was going very successfully for you at the time, or in terms of turning around a loss of income into something 3 times as big. What was the next step along the journey for you?
Like I said, I was able to finish at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and go to the pub.
Nice, yeah.
But unfortunately, if you're finishing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and your mates aren't finishing work till 5 or 6 o'clock, then you've probably had a few beers before they even get there.
Yes.
And one day I got nabbed going home for drink driving.
Wow, yeah.
So that was the end of my window cleaning business.
Right, okay. Another setback. Okay, and then what happened from there?
So I decided that I would go and find a traditional job, one close to home. So right across the road was Burton's Gold Medal Biscuits.
Right.
And having trained in engineering, they were looking for some machine mechanics.
Yeah.
I went along and spent a lot of years operating the Wagon wheel machine.
Wow, well, the chocolates with the cream in the middle.
Those are the ones, mate.
Wow, I missed those. Those are amazing. Is it true they got smaller over time as well?
It is, mate. You've got to contain the profit margin, so that's the only way they could do it. Yeah.
So you're a wagon wheel warrior.
I was a wagon wheel warrior.
Fantastic. And how long did that go for?
I went for a few years, and then I met a young lady, and we started a family. So we had to bring in some more dollars. We bought a house, and I started to look around for how could I improve my career. And I was offered a position with a muffler manufacturer, made mufflers for Jaguar and Ford.
What's a muffler?
An exhaust pipe.
Okay, right, yeah.
And so that was an organisation called Arvin's, or Chiswick's at the time, but they changed their name to Arvin. And I became a quality control inspector on their night shift.
Right.
So here I am trucking along. We've got one child now, and our home. And then my wife falls pregnant again. So we...
It wasn't just her fault, mate. Just blame her for that one.
So we then decided that we need a bigger house.
Yeah.
And we moved and upgraded and do what you do. And then the night shift was actually under threat of redundancy because there was a downturn in the car industry.
Right.
And unfortunately it happened.
Yeah.
I was made redundant.
So that's the 3rd time now, is it?
So there's a 3rd setback.
Wow.
So whilst I would been hearing the rumours about the possibility of redundancy, I was exploring in a franchise. So do you remember the old bars, soft drinks, door-to-door soft drinks?
Yeah.
Or Alpine.
And there's a SodaStream version as well. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So I went and had a chat with them, and they wanted an extortionate amount of money to buy a franchise off them.
Yeah.
So I decided that with my redundancy pay, I'd just go out and buy my own van and start my own business called Family Choice Deliveries. Can
I just stop you there? I just want to ask, we now know that there's been 3 failures in that history, through no fault of your own, but still, how did somebody pick themselves up and go opportunity? Can you tell us more about that?
First failure was the catalyst.
Yeah.
And from there, it just became a minor setback.
Yep.
So already the lateral thinking had expanded.
Yep.
and that burns a neurological pathway.
Sure.
So when you're put under pressure again and another apparent failure happens, then you've already opened up that neurological pathway to work on the solutions.
I understand. I think that in terms of more now than then, they would be understood as resilience, and it's something that that we are trying to educate our own children, my wife and I, in that pathway as well, the pathway of resilience. So you'd probably agree with me in terms of resilience is a key attribute to learn or have for an entrepreneur. Would that be true?
Through that journey, there were other challenges. So having a stepfather, being bullied at school, all of these things instill a form of resistance or resilience.
Yeah.
If you can overcome those challenges, then you can overcome anything.
Yeah.
And I started the soft drink round. I, just again by knocking on a few doors, asking a few friends and families if they'd take the deliveries, built it up. And as I was building it up, the car industry had an upturn.
Okay.
So they rehired me as a quality control inspector on the night shift again.
Fantastic.
So now I had my business and I had the stable income.
Wow, fantastic.
But it did take its toll.
Yes.
So here's disaster number 4.
Right, okay, yes.
Whilst I was doing the night shift and then doing the deliveries, I took on an extra run on a Friday to run down to Birmingham and to deliver some hooks that were made in Blackpool for Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
So when you go down to Sainsbury's, you have a booking in time, and if you miss that booking in time, you have to queue.
Right.
And you have to wait for somebody else to miss their booking in time, and then you can sneak in.
Right, okay.
I waited all day. So I'd done a full delivery round, a full night shift, and then a full day waiting around to deliver these hooks.
So you're now exhausted, tired.
Exhausted and tired, and I'm having to drive 2 hours back to Blackpool.
And probably hungry as well by that point, I should imagine as well.
The hunger was taken care of. The Sainsbury's have got a fantastic canteen, but I did want to get home. I was tired. So, and on a Friday afternoon, going back up the M6, then it was busy.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, just before I hit the barrier at 70 miles an hour,
wow,
made me realise that it wasn't worth it.
Sure.
So because I worked so hard, because I wanted to get ahead, because my wife was at home looking after the children and couldn't work, so I was the main breadwinner, doing 3 different jobs. It took its toll on our relationship, and I just realised that it wasn't worth dying over.
Sure.
So that very night, I went home and I moved my immediate belongings out, and unfortunately, my marriage ended.
I'm sorry to hear that. Let's take a quick break, get a drink, and we'll be right back with you shortly. Welcome back. We're just going to continue the story now with Big Al, who's left us with a cliffhanger position in terms of where he was up to in the life history of Big Al and your current successes. So Al, please do continue that story.
So thank you, John. And obviously, I made some life-changing decisions at that time of my life, and I decided to come to Australia.
Right, okay.
Fresh start, I went and had a little try at corporate life in the banking system. So I worked for Bank West for a little while.
Yeah.
I then had another dabble at franchising, and I had an anti-graffiti paint franchise for a while.
Wow.
And then I met a lady. I had met her just before I left the UK. In fact, she was the reason for coming to Australia. And we got married, and we decided to settle down and have children. And so the franchise thing was anti-graffiti paint. It was working with solvents, so I didn't really want that around
the family.
Yeah, so I decided to move on from there.
Yeah.
And my wife at the time, because she was pregnant, she was doing some walking and delivering Betterware catalogues.
Yes. So
of all the things, I end up becoming the estate manager for Betterware here in Australia.
Wow. So that didn't happen overnight, though, Al. Sorry to interrupt you, but that didn't happen overnight. You didn't just walk into a estate manager job with Betterware, I'm sure. What was the process? Tell us about the process of saying, okay, let's get involved in this, to becoming estate manager.
So there were some ups and downs, and we moved companies because of a handshake agreement that wasn't upheld.
Okay.
And slowly we started to build a team, and we built a team not exactly the way the company wanted it. It wasn't about statistics. It was about real people, and it was about building the team so that they understood that every single one of them was important.
Of course, yeah.
And it wasn't all the accolades to the top salespeople. In fact, the accolades to the top salespeople, they were asked if they would distribute them to those who were trying harder.
Right, okay.
And almost like a relay race, if you've got set targets and the last person on the team doesn't actually meet their set target, then everybody fails.
Sure.
Because you haven't met that quota.
One team.
So one team.
Gotcha, yeah.
And that philosophy is stuck with me, and yes, we became the number one state. I was the number one state manager. My team were number one state coordinators. So that again gave me the taste of success. So it was under my own banner, the Buyer Direct Group. We had a $2 million a year turnover from those catalogues. So that was my first success in Australia.
So just to go back to the team then, so if I check my understanding of what you've just told me, in looking after other people, in looking after your team and your people, the team itself was the most successful in the country.
Exactly.
Right? Well, that's a pretty powerful statement. That's fantastic.
Because they wanted to. Because they didn't want to let each other down. They weren't working for me. They were working for each other.
It was a community spirit.
It was a community spirit.
Fantastic.
And now we get to some. So I have had some challenges in my life, but that second lady that I married was my soulmate. Is my soulmate.
Yeah.
So Dawn and I will be married forever.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, at 38 years old, fit, healthy, black belt at karate, she was diagnosed with cancer and given 3 months to live.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go into that story today because it is painful even 10 years later.
Of course, yeah.
But unfortunately, I lost her, and at the time, my daughters were 8 and 10 years old. So you talk about resilience. That's when I had to really call on that resilience. But over time, you do get back, and there's a lot more to that story as well, which is probably for another edition. I don't know whether you want to continue that on, but part of the choices I made in grief led me to becoming homeless.
Wow. Okay.
So from having everything, a $2 million company, turnover company, to becoming homeless, that happened within 3 years.
Wow.
Raising 2 daughters as a sole parent.
Wow.
Grieving.
Yeah.
My own health challenges.
Yeah.
So there was 3 years of my life that I was very, very angry.
Yeah.
Angry with the system.
And every right
angry with the situation.
Yeah.
And it wasn't good for me.
No. So Al, that's really deep, and thank you for sharing. I'd love to understand. I'm sure other people watching would love to understand, how did you turn that around from what was obviously a very difficult time for you into the success that you have now and the person you are now today?
One day, I realised that if anything was going to change, it was up to me.
Yep.
So I saw an ad for an organisation called NABO, and NABO is a community organisation.
Yep.
Now, when I was homeless...
Sorry to ask, I must understand, where did you see that ad? You were homeless at the time, where was the ad?
The homelessness led me to having to go into hospital for a week.
Right, okay.
And although I wasn't suicidal,
Yeah.
they had me on suicide watch.
Yeah.
So, when you go into a place where you just never dreamt that would happen,
Yes.
and you see other people who are completely normal people just going through very, very strong situational challenges.
Yep.
It's humbling.
Yeah.
And the good thing that came out of it was there is a system, a support system, and I was very fortunate to be picked up in that support system and given a home in an area that I probably wouldn't have chosen.
Yeah.
But it was a new home, and it was a place where I could have my family back together again, and we could start to mend and heal as a family. So that anger was partly because of the place that I was placed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll openly tell you it was Girraween,
Mm-hmm.
and so we hid away from the community. My daughters, two tall blonde girls, they had some challenges walking alone.
Sure.
to come home from school.
Yeah.
I didn't change them from their school in Duncraig for obvious reasons, because with my resilience, I thought I would bounce and I would be out of there in 6 months.
If you've done it before, you can do it again, absolutely.
It took me 5 years.
Wow.
And it took me 5 years because, and the reason I want to tell this story and why I've been so personal, is that I have walked a mile in most people's shoes. I don't mentor and coach from a textbook. I don't mentor and coach from a life of privilege.
Yeah.
I mentor and coach from a life of experience.
Yeah, from your heart.
And from my heart.
Sure. Let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and get some great insights, more great insights, in fact, from Big Al. So welcome back. We're now going to talk about, with Big Al, some of the strategies that he put in place to turn things around, and exactly how long it took for him to turn that around as well. So Big Al, how long did it take?
So like I said, I thought I was going to bounce 6 months and be out of there.
Yeah.
It actually took 5 years.
Right, okay.
But 3 of those years were entirely down to me being so angry, so filled with grief, so disappointed that the one area that I probably wouldn't have chosen to live in, Perth, was where I had to choose to keep my family together.
Yeah.
And other than my immediate neighbours, which I got on famously with, I just didn't engage with anybody in that community any further.
Okay.
So after 3 years, I came across a program called NABO, and they were looking for suburb leads. I thought, okay, well, I can do that. And it meant me actually getting to know some of my immediate neighbours.
Yeah.
that was an awe-inspiring moment. That was the time that I actually realised that I was being racist
Right.
in not engaging with my community.
Yeah.
And when I did engage with them, when I got to hear their stories, there were a lot of them that were very similar to mine.
Right.
There were a lot of them that were 10 times worse than mine. They'd come from war-ravaged regions. They'd seen their families murdered. They'd seen their siblings and parents, raped and killed. And
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Come on. They didn't speak English. They couldn't get a job.
Yeah.
They didn't choose that area either. They were forced there because that's where social housing was. So we were a community together. When I understood that, my world started to open up again. And I did have to let people know what I actually did, what was my background. And I said, look, I've been an entrepreneur since the age of 8, and I think I want to say that is my career. I am actually an entrepreneur.
Yep.
I took a psychometric profiling test, and it confirmed that I had a dynamo energy and that a creator profile. And this is what I really picked up from it: that I was 50% introvert and 50% extrovert. Now I thought that would be an oxymoron, really.
Yeah.
However, it explained so much in what had happened in my life. Why did Big Al come around? Because when people call me Big Al, I now have to be in my extroverted mode.
Sure.
But as you probably can see, my introverted mode is a lot more from the heart. It's a lot more family oriented, and now I coexist between the two. And there are a lot of people like that. There are a lot of actors get up on the stage. They're actually terribly shy, and then they get on the stage and they belt out an award-winning performance. So I gathered strength from that, from connecting to the neighbourhood, from understanding that it wasn't them, it was me, from taking ownership, putting it out there that I was an entrepreneur. I was then contacted by a number of organisations, one being Entrepreneur Cafe out of India.
Yeah.
They made me their city mayor for Perth, so I was the lead for Girraween, but I was now the city mayor for the whole of Perth.
Right.
And they asked me to bring a delegation to India from Western Australia. So I took a small delegation here, Zijin Pasha from Nifnex, who was a prodigal son returning to Bengaluru. Phil Britton, the Bali bombing survivor, Samantha, Reg, and Dr. Shalim Ismail. And we went to India, and it was fantastic. Great experience and exposure for us all.
Yeah.
Came back, they wanted to make me the Oceania director, and we were heading down that pathway. They wanted to hold a congress in Perth, and unfortunately they weren't able to get their delegation to fund their delegation to come. So I then still wanted to run a conference or an exhibition, so I looked for another organisation and I came across Gen Global.
Yeah.
And in that time I decided to register the name Entrepreneursville, which is a community where people connect, collaborate, create and celebrate.
Okay, so Entrepreneursville is yours?
Entrepreneursville, I'm the founder,
Yeah.
and that is my official organisation and entity.
Yeah.
And that entity has now been given the license to host Global Entrepreneurship Week Australia. So we've moved out of Western Australia now, and we now have the opportunity to represent the whole of Australia.
So Global Entrepreneurship, is that what GEN stands for?
So Global Entrepreneurship Week is a celebration every November. This year it's from the 12th to the 18th of November.
Yeah.
And GEN was formed so that they could bring other programs around the world
Yeah.
throughout the year, rather than just having one celebration
Sure.
in November.
But just so that I understand and everybody watching understands, what does GEN stand for?
So the Global Entrepreneurship Network.
Okay, gotcha.
It is powered by the Kaufman Foundation out of Kansas,
Right, okay.
which has turned an agricultural centre in the Midwest of USA into a entrepreneur's paradise. So
Sure.
out of Silicon Valley, Kansas City is one of the most desired places to visit and learn as an entrepreneur.
Wow.
So they power Gen Global.
Yeah.
Gen Global powers Entrepreneursville.
Right.
And
You power Global Entrepreneursville Australia.
and yes, so they offered me the position of acting managing director.
Yeah.
And I said yes, I would take on the role. So I'm now for the next 2 years building the organisation so that it can sustain itself.
Yeah.
Putting together a board with board members in each state.
Yeah.
And then at some stage next year we will become a affiliate partner of Gen Global. So
Okay. So tell me how. So I understand a little bit now of how the top-down ecosystem works for the Global Entrepreneurs Network. How does that practically play out into the local community? What is the physical or otherwise signs of that taking place in WA and beyond?
yeah, great question, John. Obviously, entrepreneurship, collaboration, these words are all buzzwords now.
Yeah.
We are in changing times, innovation, digital revolution, emerging technologies. It just means that the jobs that we thought we had for life, we now have to unlearn those jobs and reskill and learn another job, which may last for 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. And we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship allows that. Entrepreneurship also breaks down the barriers around socioeconomic status as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously in those communities, if we can get them self-employed, maybe cleaning windows,
Sure.
because that's all it, sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship. So people think that they're not an entrepreneur because they're not like Elon Musk or they're not like Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Elon Musk and Richard Branson didn't start out where they are now.
No.
They actually started out, Richard Branson, for example, writing a student magazine for the university. That was how he made his first dollars.
Yeah.
So small business, anything under 20 employees is classed as a small business.
Yeah.
Or a micro business, self-employment. That is the way forward for Australia. That is how we are going to turn our economic situation around.
Okay, thank you, Al. That's a great spot for a break. Welcome back. So Al, just to understand, it does seem to me to be a clear link between entrepreneurship and the community for you. Is that right? Am I reading it right?
Yes, John, because during those challenging times, the conversations that I were having to have and the feedback that I was getting was that that people been displaced from their home communities, and they miss that.
Yeah.
And even people who were from Western Australia, they talked about the times when they could leave their car keys in their car ignition, and they could leave their doors unlocked and windows open, and the community looked after their pets if you went away. And so that sense of community, I think, because of the digital age and everybody's stuck in their phones and driving into their garages and going in through the pantry door, and not even connecting with their neighbours. And the fact that I was the suburb lead for NABO, where they did a survey, and the survey said that 50% of the community don't actually want to know their neighbours.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But 50% of the community do.
Sure.
So entrepreneurship, community, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
When we can create a circular economy again, because that's how we used to support ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you had the corner deli and the fish and chip shop and the lawn mowing guy all living in the same area, if I paid John $1 and John paid Michael $1 and Michael paid me $1 back, that created a circular economy.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
So we were all able to live quite nicely from that kind of arrangement. And then obviously there was some bigger organisations came along, and we don't necessarily keep all of that dollar circulating in our community anymore.
Right. Okay.
But there is an opportunity with emerging technologies for us to maybe recreate that.
Yeah.
So platforms like Shopify, for example, if you're a great artist, then why not put all your arts up on Shopify?
Yeah.
Because that will attract dollars back into our circular economy.
Yeah.
My partner Samantha, she builds craft boxes, and she's just put that online on Facebook, so it brings money back into the community.
Sure.
And for us, the reason we met was about Startup Huddle. It was about entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
building a safe environment for people to come and share their stories, to talk about how they can solve problems for the community, and maybe take those problem-solving skills to the local government.
Yeah.
Because if they found the solution for the challenge in the community, then it should be easy for the government to then get the community to implement that solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have to say thank you so much for that. I mean, in terms of my experience of Jen and yourself and everything, it's been fantastic from my point of view to meet and work with people who are like-minded as me. I didn't realise that I was an entrepreneur until only coming really along and joining and being part of that community. So thank you, Al. That's been an amazing change for me as well.
Most welcome, John.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Al, for coming on today. We've probably kept you a lot longer than we would do most guests. Really appreciate that. It's been fantastic. In terms of Jen, Startup Huddle, and all the things you're working on at the moment, how do people engage and get involved in these things if they want to find out more?
Well, thank you for asking, John. And the power of being involved in a global entrepreneurship network means that there are many, many programs from all around the world that are constantly being developed that I can now channel through to our local communities.
Yeah.
So we run meetups, we run workshops, we run startup huddles, we run events. You can go to eshipworks.org, and you will find out all of the events that are happening. And I believe, John, you're going to have a special website for people to be able to link into and to maybe contact me through you. I'm quite happy to field those questions.
Anything I can do, sorry to interrupt, to support what you're doing, absolutely we'll do that. We'll create a landing page or a website or something so people can register from our channel, from our show, and connect with you and the community through that.
Fantastic.
Thank
you, John.
Thanks, mate.